Well, I imagine this film to be international for sure, which means bigger budget, unfortunately. But yeah, it kind of has to be. This is a global topic. It's a global issue, and yeah, I don't see any way around having to travel all over the place. I'm looking at possibly, 8 to 10 cities, with throughout the United States, Asia, and Europe at this point.
Wow.
Yeah, and that I'm still researching too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you envision how long the pre-production process will be, and then actual shooting and then post? Do you have an idea?
Yeah, the pre-production phase, because I'm so in it now and kind of doing a lot of the development work already, we kind of have a good head start on all the pre-production work. But yeah, I think I need about 3-4 months to do proper pre-production and plan the production phase properly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So you envision maybe it'll take a couple years to have it totally finished?
Unfortunately, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm picturing about 2 years for this film. Yeah, which is pretty good considering how long documentaries can sometimes take.
And when did you have, and forgive me if you've already said this, but when did you have the first idea about this? Was this when you were still doing the source, or when did it kind of strike you? Because there'll be that idea this is interesting, and then you kind of let it ruminate and you think about it. Do you remember
when did it happen? Yeah, so I saw the movie Integrate Silence back in 2006, but I still hadn't come up with an idea to do a documentary about it. I was more just kind of personally interested in silence. And then I read an article about John Cage, and then got really excited about silence again. This was years later after watching Integrate Silence. And then I started spending some time with Nathaniel Dorsky, this experimental filmmaker, who we actually hired to consult on the source during the post-production phase. On the side, he does editing consulting, and he's done editing consulting for POV and a bunch of major documentaries. And so I had the honor and privilege to work with him and just kind of get to know him and pick his brain. And then I started seeing his work, and turned out he was this famous experimental filmmaker. And I just loved this idea of making a film that's of something, rather than about something. And I think that's when it all came full circle. It was Integrate Silence, John Cage, and then Nathaniel Dorsky. This is how I could actually execute this film, and it was kind of a no-brainer at that point. Yeah. So to answer your question more directly, it was probably within the last year or so that I came upon it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned before that you can become obsessive sometimes about different things, like the Kickstarter or whatever.
Yeah.
Did that become your new obsession? Is and then your mind starts finding things that are of silence or of noise, or
Total. Yeah. And yeah, silence has definitely become an obsession of mine, a healthy obsession, I hope. But it has to be. If you're going to spend 2 years of your life minimum on a film, you have to be obsessed with the topic, or you're going to be miserable. It's likely going to be challenging and kind of miserable at times anyway, and so it better be something you care dearly about, So yeah, I'm glad that I'm obsessive about it, and that's kind of how I knew it was time to make a film about it. Yeah.
Are most of the times that it's painful and miserable, are those in post?
Yeah. Yeah, the pain and misery is just kind of a reoccurring thing throughout the production of a film, I feel like. I mean, there's challenges along the way in every phase of the production. Post-production is definitely one of the more challenging phases, I think, of making a project. And let me think about that for a second. Yeah, I mean, there's pain and misery throughout the whole thing, It's hard. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into making a film, but that's what makes it great and so rewarding at the end when you do finish. Especially with documentaries, you just don't know what's happening. You really have to be on your toes the entire way, because the story's developing and unfolding before your eyes, and it could go a million different directions. You could tell the story in a million different ways, and it requires a lot of you for sure. Yeah, and financing alone is probably one of the key sources of pain and misery in any given independent film. So.